Chaos has erupted at the very heart of British politics. The Supreme Court has dropped a bombshell ruling that has left the nation reeling and Keir Starmer's career hanging by a thread. In an unprecedented judgment, the court has called for the Prime Minister's immediate resignation, exposing a trail of financial misconduct, hidden favors, and a shocking betrayal of public trust. The question gripping the country now is simple. Will Starmer step down quietly, or will he plunge Britain into an historic constitutional crisis in a desperate bid to cling to power? The atmosphere in Westminster is electric, charged with disbelief and rising tension. Moments ago, the Supreme Court delivered a ruling so explosive it has shattered the illusion of political stability. Chief Justice Dame Sue Carr, speaking with icy precision, did not mince words. She declared that no individual, not even the Prime Minister, is above the law and demanded Starmer's immediate resignation. This is not merely a legal judgment. It is a direct confrontation between the highest court, the government, and the monarchy. Starmer's political empire, once portrayed as unshakable, is now crumbling before the eyes of a stunned nation. The judgment has uncovered a staggering financial scandal. An astonishing £124,000 discrepancy in Starmer's property records has been revealed, money that vanished mysteriously from official filings. Beyond this, court documents expose tens of thousands in undeclared luxury perks, private jet flights, designer attire, rare wines, and even a Rolex of extraordinary value, all quietly supplied by wealthy donors seeking influence. Court investigators meticulously traced the flow of funds through offshore accounts, shell companies in Jersey and the Isle of Man, and even a secret £52,000 consulting payment from a defense contractor desperate for government approval. No contracts, no invoices, just a wire transfer, exposing the textbook definition of influence peddling at the highest level. What makes this scandal even more explosive is the sheer hypocrisy. Starmer, who publicly condemned tax evasion and called for integrity in politics, has secretly funneled favors from billionaires while softening regulations, halting investigations, and targeting rivals for silence. Leaked communications detail donors explicitly demanding policy adjustments in exchange for lavish gifts, and Starmer appears to have delivered on those demands. The Supreme Court's ruling branded these actions as a severe betrayal of public trust, warning that such corruption threatens the very foundations of British democracy. The fallout has been immediate and ferocious. Protesters swarmed London streets within minutes of the announcement, chanting, "Lock him up!" Opposition leaders called for snap elections, while Labour MPs began breaking ranks on live television. One senior member described Starmer as a disgrace in a red tie, signaling open revolt within his own party. Despite this, Starmer has refused to resign. In a late-night address, he dismissed the ruling as politically motivated and vowed to stay in office. That defiance transformed a financial scandal into a full-blown constitutional standoff, raising questions not seen in centuries. What happens when a prime minister refuses to obey the Supreme Court? Inside Number 10, the scene has been described as apocalyptic. Senior aides are reportedly shredding documents, burning files, and resigning mid-meeting as Starmer's inner circle fractures. Cabinet ministers are quietly preparing no-confidence letters, while Starmer doubles down on defiance, calling the Supreme Court's order a judicial coup and vowing to fight to the end. Each word, each gesture fans the flames of a nation already on edge. The judgment further revealed a disturbing pattern of abuse of power. Starmer allegedly used government machinery to intimidate journalists, suppress Reform UK from debates, and target donors critical of his leadership with surprise tax audits. Court records paint a chilling portrait. A prime minister who prioritized personal survival over public duty, using office and influence to manipulate outcomes in his favor. The Supreme Court's language was unflinching, labeling this a systemic assault on the democratic process. Public fury has reached a boiling point. Tens of thousands of citizens have poured into Westminster, erecting barricades outside Parliament, chanting for immediate justice. Police and riot gear have been deployed, and armored vehicles were spotted near the Supreme Court building. Social media erupts with videos and messages showing demonstrators waving placards demanding, "No one is above the law." This is no longer a partisan dispute. It is a national reckoning, a direct challenge to whether Britain's institutions still hold authority. Even the monarchy has entered the fray. Buckingham Palace has reportedly cut short King Charles's Balmoral retreat, convening emergency meetings with constitutional advisors. Sources suggest the nuclear option, using the royal prerogative to dismiss the Prime Minister, has now been seriously considered. A direct clash between Crown and Commons, unthinkable for centuries, now looms as a real possibility. Political historians have described the crisis as the gravest threat to British democracy since the English Civil War. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury has warned that no leader, however powerful, is above divine law, underscoring the gravity of the moment. International reaction has been swift and stunned. Washington issued a rare midnight statement expressing serious concern about Britain's constitutional collapse. European capitals scrambled emergency summits, while markets reacted violently, with the pound plunging to levels unseen since 2008. Diplomatic channels quietly prepared contingency plans in case of total governmental collapse. Inside the UK, civil servants are openly defying orders, prioritizing duty to the Crown over compliance with a rogue administration. Military units are reportedly on standby, signaling the seriousness of the standoff. Every passing hour intensifies the crisis. Starmer remains holed up inside number 10, issuing defiant statements even as the Supreme Court's judgment, the monarchy's preparation, and the street's fury converge against him. His grip on authority is slipping, yet he refuses to yield. The nation watches with bated breath as the drama unfolds, knowing that the consequences of his defiance could reshape British politics, law, and society for generations. The standoff inside number 10 has escalated into a full-blown crisis. Starmer, once seen as the embodiment of integrity and disciplined leadership, now appears isolated and increasingly desperate. Senior aides continue to resign in droves, leaving the Prime Minister surrounded by a shrinking circle of loyalists, many of whom are terrified of being implicated in the growing scandal. Reports indicate that documents are being shredded and files burned in an attempt to erase evidence, while others quietly leak information to journalists, feeding a steady stream of revelations about misconduct and corruption. Cabinet ministers, once deferential, are privately drafting letters of no confidence, prepared to abandon a leader who refuses to acknowledge the court's authority. Starmer's defiance has transformed what might have been a contained scandal into a constitutional nightmare, forcing every institution of government into uncharted territory. Court investigators have painted a damning portrait of Starmer's financial misconduct. Forensic accountants have traced millions through offshore accounts and shadow companies, exposing a network of hidden payments and undeclared perks. The most shocking revelation involves a £52,000 wire transfer from a defense contractor seeking approval for a £1 billion deal, processed with no contracts, no invoices, and no legitimate explanation. This transaction alone epitomizes influence buying at the highest level. Whistleblowers from within the Labour Party have described a culture of intimidation where staff were threatened, silenced, or dismissed if they questioned suspicious transactions. Emails and internal memos reveal donors explicitly demanding policy changes, and Starmer's office delivering those changes in direct contradiction to the public interest. The court called this conduct a systemic attack on the foundations of democracy, emphasizing that the Prime Minister exploited his office for personal and political gain. On the streets, public anger has reached historic levels. What began as small protests outside Parliament has swelled into massive demonstrations across London, with hundreds of thousands chanting "Resign now" and "Starmer out." Barricades have been erected, and clashes between demonstrators and riot police have intensified, creating an atmosphere of near-revolutionary unrest. Social media amplifies the fury, spreading videos of confrontations, revealing a populace that no longer views this scandal as abstract politics, but as an existential battle over whether the law still governs Britain. Commentators warn that continued defiance by Starmer risks unleashing civil unrest unseen in decades, as ordinary citizens confront a government openly challenged by its own courts and threatened by popular rebellion. Meanwhile, the monarchy has taken unprecedented steps. Buckingham Palace insiders have confirmed that King Charles returned to London for emergency consultations with constitutional advisors. Discussions reportedly include the possible use of the royal prerogative to dismiss the Prime Minister, a power that has not been exercised since 1834. Three potential courses of action are under consideration: a private ultimatum to Number 10, a public rebuke during the state opening of Parliament, or a live televised address declaring the Starmer government unlawful and dismissed. Any of these steps would ignite political shockwaves, creating a constitutional crisis that could redefine the monarchy's role in modern governance. Analysts warn that the mere contemplation of such measures reflects the extraordinary peril posed by Starmer's refusal to resign. The financial consequences of the scandal are already reverberating internationally. The pound has plunged to its lowest point in years, stock markets are in freefall, and investors are scrambling to assess the risk of governmental collapse. European leaders have convened emergency summits, while the White House issued statements expressing grave concern over Britain's stability. NATO officials are quietly reviewing contingency plans, concerned that the country's fractured leadership may compromise security commitments. Diplomats from around the globe are monitoring the crisis in real time, aware that the defiance of a single political leader now threatens the credibility and stability of one of the world's oldest democracies. Within Whitehall, the machinery of state is actively resisting the Prime Minister. Permanent secretaries have frozen access to sensitive documents, restricted communication channels, and even taken control of nuclear command codes, citing concerns over Starmer's judgment. Civil servants, long loyal to the government, have made it clear that their duty lies with the Crown and the law, not with a leader who flouts judicial authority. Reports suggest that senior generals have privately informed the Defense Secretary that they will not comply with unlawful orders from Number 10, with some units discreetly placed on standby near London. The possibility of military involvement, while not yet realized, casts a shadow over the crisis, raising the specter of a confrontation between the armed forces, the Prime Minister, and civilian institutions. Starmer's public statements have done little to calm the situation. He continues to accuse judges, the monarchy, and even his own party of orchestrating a silent coup, threatening purges of the civil service, and promising a snap election to let the people decide. Legal experts warn, however, that he no longer possesses the authority to dissolve Parliament under the shadow of the Supreme Court ruling. Each defiant declaration only exposes his isolation, weakening what remains of his credibility. Allies have begun abandoning him, party members whisper against him, and the public's patience has evaporated. The Prime Minister's image as a symbol of lawfulness and moral integrity has been replaced with that of a leader cornered, desperate, and defiant against every institution designed to hold him accountable. As the crisis deepens, every hour heightens the stakes. The Supreme Court has issued its ruling. Buckingham Palace is preparing possible intervention. The streets are boiling with outrage, and Number 10 remains a fortress under siege. Starmer's refusal to yield has pushed Britain into a moment of historic instability, a constitutional showdown without precedent in modern times. The nation watches anxiously, knowing that any misstep could spark a chain reaction. Financial collapse, mass civil unrest, and perhaps the most significant redefinition of political power in generations. With every passing moment, the question grows more urgent. How far will Keir Starmer go to cling to power, and how far will the country allow him to defy the law before the consequences become irreversible? The unfolding crisis inside Number 10 has escalated to a stage never witnessed in modern British politics. Starmer, once seen as the embodiment of law and order, now occupies a residence isolated from the machinery of government, surrounded only by a handful of loyalists, while every institution designed to maintain accountability tightens its grip. Cabinet ministers are reportedly drafting resignations and plotting emergency measures, while senior aides evacuate sensitive documents in a desperate bid to shield themselves from potential legal consequences. The Prime Minister's office, once a symbol of disciplined leadership, has transformed into a fortress under siege, as the nation watches in disbelief at a government unraveling from the inside out. Every gesture, every public statement from Starmer is scrutinized under the lens of scandal, amplifying tension across Westminster and beyond. Financial misconduct remains at the heart of the crisis. The Supreme Court's ruling revealed a meticulously traced network of undeclared income, offshore accounts, and luxury gifts, exposing the Prime Minister's abuse of power in cold detail. The most glaring of these revelations involves tens of thousands of pounds channeled through shadow companies and secret transactions designed to conceal donor influence. Among them, a $52,000 transfer from a defense contractor seeking approval for a lucrative government contract stands out, a transaction executed without contracts, invoices, or explanation, an unambiguous act of influence buying. Whistleblowers within Labour have described an environment of intimidation where staff who questioned financial irregularities were threatened, silenced, or terminated. The Supreme Court called this conduct a systemic betrayal of public trust, warning that such corruption strikes at the very foundations of democracy itself. Public reaction has surged to unprecedented levels. London streets, once orderly, have erupted into a wave of protest and fury. Demonstrators, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, have surrounded Parliament and key government buildings, erecting barricades and chanting slogans such as "Resign now" and "No one is above the law." The energy on the streets has a revolutionary undertone as ordinary citizens express their outrage at a prime minister openly defying the highest court in the land. Videos of confrontations between protesters and riot police dominate social media, spreading rapidly across the globe, signaling that Britain is facing not just a political crisis, but a national confrontation between public will and institutional authority. Commentators warn that continued defiance risks civil unrest on a scale unseen in decades, as frustration escalates from anger to a demand for decisive action. Amid this turmoil, Buckingham Palace has taken extraordinary steps. King Charles returned from Balmoral, convening urgent consultations with constitutional advisors, legal scholars, and senior members of Parliament. The possibility of invoking the royal prerogative, a power dormant since 1834, to dismiss the Prime Minister has moved from theoretical discussion to active consideration. 3 potential interventions are reportedly under review: a private ultimatum demanding voluntary resignation, a public rebuke during a formal parliamentary session, or a direct address to the nation declaring the Starmer government unlawful. Each course carries historic implications, potentially redefining the monarchy's relationship with government and setting a precedent for intervention in times of extreme constitutional danger. Analysts warn that the mere discussion of these measures reflects the unprecedented severity of Starmer's defiance. International observers have reacted with shock and alarm. The pound has fallen sharply, and stock markets show intense volatility as traders attempt to gauge the implications of a government in open conflict with its highest court. European leaders convened emergency meetings to prepare for potential fallout, while officials in Washington expressed serious concern over Britain's constitutional integrity. NATO representatives quietly evaluated the risk of instability affecting security commitments, recognizing that the refusal of a prime minister to comply with legal authority has consequences far beyond domestic politics. Diplomatic channels are abuzz with contingency planning as the international community watches a democracy teeter on the edge of collapse.
Within Whitehall, the machinery of state is actively resisting the Prime Minister. Civil servants, guided by long-standing traditions of accountability to law and crown, have frozen access to critical documents, restricted official communications, and even placed nuclear command codes under secure supervision. Military sources report that senior generals have informed the Defence Secretary they will not follow unlawful orders from Downing Street, with select units discreetly positioned in proximity to London as a precaution. The implication of these actions is stark. The institutions of governance are no longer passive observers. They are preparing to act independently to uphold legality and order, highlighting the extraordinary nature of the crisis and the erosion of Starmer's control. Starmer's public responses have only heightened the tension. He continues to accuse judges, the monarchy, and even his own party of orchestrating a silent coup, threatening sweeping purges of civil servants and vowing to call a snap election, despite warnings that he lacks the authority to dissolve Parliament under the Supreme Court's judgment. Each statement of defiance serves to expose his isolation, with allies abandoning him and public confidence eroding further. The image of a leader once praised for integrity has been replaced by that of a prime minister, cornered, desperate and in open conflict with every pillar of governance. The question facing the nation has shifted from whether Starmer is guilty to what measures will be necessary to restore lawful order and stability to a government in turmoil. Every passing hour intensifies the stakes. Protesters swell in number, legal proceedings loom. Buckingham Palace prepares unprecedented measures, and Number 10 remains fortified under siege. The nation teeters on a knife's edge, knowing that the defiance of one leader has created a moment of historic instability. Political, financial, and social consequences hang in the balance as Britain confronts a scenario no modern democracy has faced. A Prime Minister openly challenging the authority of the Supreme Court and the institutions designed to uphold law and order. The suspense is palpable, and the world watches as history is being written in real time, with every action, every decision, and every hour determining the fate of a nation.